Well, this might be the most excited I've been for any conversation. Mr. George Balhan is on. This is going to go on Gears and Nachos, George, which, I know you've done a lot of cool things in your life, but surely the Gears and Nachos podcast has got to rank up there with the highest of accomplishments you've ever had in your career.
Did not sleep at night. I was so excited. Bryce, this has been such a long time coming.
Yeah.
Not just for Monster Jam fans, but I think for you and me both.
Yeah, man, I agree. Well, thanks for joining us, man. And it's funny because there's been so many calls that you and I have had where, we'll be on the phone and I'm like, man, and we've said this out loud to each other, haven't we? Where it's like, man, I wish we could just record what we were talking about
Absolutely.
and kind of let people in. And so that's what we want to do, is just kind of jump on here and invite the fans into that kind of conversation, because the Mohawk Warrior chapter of the monster truck industry is a really cool one. And it's one that seemed to take a lot of different turns through the years. And so for all the listeners, our plan today, it may not go this way. We're just going to kind of have a natural conversation, but our plan is really just to talk about the Mohawk Warrior brand and how it started, how the transition happened with me and George, and then and now that Mohawk Warrior is the official term is it's parked, whatever that might mean. And probably that's a great disclaimer to go ahead and give at the very beginning, which is Mohawk Warrior is not owned by George or myself. It is a Feld product. It is a Monster Jam product. And this is not a Monster Jam podcast, right? This is not a Monster Jam and Feld. This is not their opinion or any of their insights. This is two guys that drove Mohawk Warrior, one of them really coming up with the whole brand itself, and the stories kind of along the way. So everyone kind of keep that in mind. This is not, speaking on behalf of Feld or Monster Jam. This is just kind of our run. So George, I appreciate the flexibility too, dude. You got anything to add to that disclaimer? I don't know.
Yeah. So honestly, well, it's not so much a disclaimer, but kind of touch on, like you said, we've had some phone conversations, and I know we had a conscious discussion when we've had those, is to not really talk about what we were going to talk about, because we wanted it to be an organic conversation. And I know we're both emotional guys, so I think they can be ready for some emotion. And it's been a long time coming, and I wish we would have done it sooner, because I know we would have had more phone conversations. But the second we would both kind of start talking on this, we would both say, hey, let's stop and hold that conversation for the podcast. So,
yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? That's cool.
Yeah, I'm glad the stars aligned and it finally happened. We both have little ones, and you're traveling all the time, but it finally came together.
Yeah. Well, and most importantly too, I think that's one of the things that just make us feel like we're brothers, because, we started having kids. I've got 3 kids, 9, 7, and 3. Roxy just turned how old?
She just turned 7. Yeah.
7. Yeah. So it's like, man, and your son, how old's your son right now?
Yeah. So I have a son from a previous marriage. He's 20.
20. Yeah.
And then the older one is 22. So yeah. It's a long, I took a long break, but then again, just being a little bit older and being off the road, I seem more appreciative of every little process that's going on right now.
Yeah. And
I'm in my daughter's room, if you can't tell, as much as I love Hello Kitty and everything like that, where's it at right there? I'm in her room. Her room is a quiet room while she's at school right now. And
yeah.
So
yeah, I didn't expect you to have a pink backdrop for our call today. I like it, though.
Yeah, I live in California now. You never know.
That's right. That's right. But there is something, man. There's something about having kids and stuff. I think the older you get, the more just things are certainly kept in perspective by that stuff. And so anyway, well, man, let's go back to the beginning. Let's just talk about Mohawk Warrior and the genesis of it. And it's funny because a lot of people ask me, how'd this start? Where'd it come from? And so I have kind of my knowledge of it, and my answer that I've always given fans. And before I give it, right, I'm going to see how close mine is, of course, with the real answer. Because I've heard 2 things. I've heard it be, it was entirely your baby and your brainchild. And then the company kind of came in and said, okay, yep, let's adopt it. Let's build that. I remember early on, well, I think it was still in Monster Mutt. I remember hearing about tension of when they used to have the figures and it was like your face on it, and like there was some tension around that. So anyway, because it goes back to the how Mohawk Warrior really came about. But let's just start there, man. Like you were in Escalade, and then that wasn't able to run anymore, from what I understand. Like Cadillac may have had an issue. Is kind of the story that I heard. You had to come up with.
It was weird. Like they never wanted to let us sell any merchandise. When I say us, I mean us and Feld, and it might have been Clear Channel at the time. I don't remember what. I think it was Clear Channel at the time. And so they were against anything, which was kind of crazy. They felt like we weren't the right demographic for them. But man, I really feel like it could have been a good partnership that just never happened. So, my first World Finals I got invited to, I've always kind of been into punk rock and kind of alternative type music. And maybe I'll even go back a notch to where, I got hired for the Escalade. Or when the Escalade came about, I was driving another truck, and the Escalade, I'm not sure who it was the brainchild of. It was one of the either the two VPs or the president at the time. I'm not sure if it was Charlie Mancuso, who was the president at the time. Ken Hutchins and Roy Jansen were the two VPs. Roy was operations. Ken was on the marketing end. But it was somebody's brainchild that they wanted to go for a different demographic, the younger, hipper, the kids that were at the age where they were too cool for Monster Jam, right? The 15 to 18-year-olds that would say, hey, you take little Johnny and Debbie to Monster Jam. I want to stay home and listen to music.
Yeah.
Because there was really nothing for them at the time to root for. So when the Escalade came about, they kind of gave us a clean slate, like, hey, it's just going to be an all-black Escalade. And from there, it kind of evolved where they let us, hey, let's put spinners on the truck. Spinners went on the truck. Hey, let's do neon lights. They're like, all right, sounds cool. Nobody has neon lights. Then I started, like, I was sitting at the pit party. I'm like, man, I'm bored at the pit party. Can we do a stereo system in this thing? Like, make it seem like it's got a stereo system in it. So they went for that. We had a stereo system built for it that would go up in the engine bay, and it looked like it was mounted to the firewall, but it was just set in there, and we'd pull it out after the pit party. Mounted some TVs on the side, started playing some Crash Madness DVDs. So at the time, all the drivers, we were just stuck there standing. We didn't have tables, we didn't have anything, and I was like, hey, can we grab a couch and the fans can sit next to me and make it more of a pit like party type thing, to where and it's what happened. It, like, there would be long lines at everybody's thing, but after people would go through the lines, like, I've seen overhead shots where everyone's kind of around the Escalade because they're watching the DVDs on the thing, listening to music. And so that's how that whole thing came about. And then when I got invited to my first World Finals, I was like, you know what, I'm going to take it a step farther. And the day before I left, I shaved my head into a mohawk. And so I showed up at the pit party, and my fans are great. The next day at Vegas pit party, I'm not sure how it is nowadays, but we had like 3 days worth of pit parties. The first day, the diehard guests would pay extra money to get in, and where there's no lines. And so come Friday's pit party, I don't know, 5 or 10 kids showed back up that had gone through my line with mohawks. They let their parents, they conned their parents into letting them shave their head into mohawks. And so I came up with my little Mohawk Warriors just on the fly. My first interview I did, and that was the start of the Mohawk Warriors. And then with that, I'm not a big fan of wrestling, but I started watching it because at the time it was huge, and I wanted to figure out like some type of a way to enhance my persona. And I don't know, I just started calling it the Mohawk Nation, and from there on, it just kind of grew. Over the next few years, I had more and more kids showing up with mohawks. I went out and had a great freestyle run the next, maybe it might have been even the next year, and then went up into the towers at Vegas at the World Finals and watched the rest of the show from up there. I think I sat on the chair for a little bit. Then once I got bumped off, at the time, NGK flew their flags on the back of my truck, and they had a suite. So I went up there to kind of talk to the people at NGK and watched the rest of the show up there. They were always phenomenal to me. And as I was walking out, the VP and the president, they just kind of pulled me in the side. They're like, that Mohawk Warrior, Mohawk Nation thing is great. What do you think about a Mohawk Warrior truck? And I was like, it's awesome. Let's do it. And from there, it kind of was cool because at the time I lived near where their corporate headquarters were. Mm-hmm. And so during the week, 1 or 2 days a week, I would handle their freestyle motocross stuff for them in Monster Jams, help prepare the contracts for the guy booking the riders, making sure the schedules were where they were going and all that good stuff. And those guys were just my friends. So I'd go in there, go to lunch with the guys, prepare my contracts for the guys, whatever I had to do. But then I'd dip over to the department where they did all the designing of the trucks. And it was cool. Neil Vandenberg and Jay Laws are the two guys that were the ones designing it, who are just phenomenal. Like any truck any kid loves, them two had their fingers in it.
That's very true.
So yeah, they're like, those guys don't get enough credit. Like we always talked about the mechanics and the operational guys and everybody, but these guys are just hounded out successful trucks. Like just they found their niche and they know what kids love. And so with that being said, like there was a few different designs of it. And I was able to have some input on what I liked and didn't like. Any range from, like, one of them, I have this sleeve on my arm. Actually, Neil drew that sleeve out for me.
Huh.
So one of the designs was, he basically made my tattoo into a wrap around the truck. There was a few different ones, and we just kept falling in love with, the one that it is now. Like, and that's what everybody else loved. And so that's kind of how that came about. Was it just, was that?
And set the record straight. The face on the side of it, was that him putting your face on there?
So yes, it's my likeness. Yeah. It was my likeness. Those are the sunglasses I wore at the time. I had a sunglass company, Black Flies, that was giving me sunglasses. And they looked, I mean, it was a likeness is what.
Yeah, likeness. Yeah. That's the legal term.
Legal term. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. I got to ask that all the time too. Like, who's facing the side of it? And I'd always tell them yours. And so I never actually officially asked. And it's funny too, because there's probably a lot of things with this truck I never officially asked, because sometimes if you don't want to know the answer, then you don't ask it. I wanted to be able to just say, like, oh yeah, the original driver, George Balhan, it's his likeness on the side.
Right.
How's that? But yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't realize too that it actually started fan first.
Yeah.
It started with just the kids showing up and you calling them your little Mohawk Warriors. Like, I didn't even realize that. Maybe there's fans like that's going to be nails on the chalkboard to some people. I drove the truck for 8 years, but that's not again, people need to understand this conversation that you and I are having right now is not a conversation that we ever really were able to
Never
have.
had it. Nope.
And there's so many dynamics with both of us and our stories and our chapters, our separate train tracks that we were on. We just really weren't able to have this kind of dialogue. And now that the truck is parked for now, I think we're able to have that. But that's pretty cool. That's so cool that it started fan first, because one of the things, my first impression of you was in Birmingham, Alabama. Do you remember? I was in Mud, so you do remember. Okay.
That was your first show, right?
It was, yeah. And I didn't know what to expect from anybody. I didn't grow up around this sport. I didn't. I mean, my first really engagement with the sport as a whole was, with them calling me and saying, do you want to come and audition in a truck? And you'd be like, well, who would turn that down? That sounds like fun. So even going to Birmingham, like, it wasn't my first event that I had ever been to. But it was certainly one of the first 3, I bet. So let's call it my 3rd event ever. I was driving a truck in that event. Right. So, but I remember going to Birmingham. It was your tour. I was like a surprise truck. Monster Mutt was like a surprise additional truck that was thrown in there. I remember 2 things. So you had John Zimmer, Sr. You had who else was there? You had it was you. We had Carolina Crusher. Okay, so anyway, I remember John Zimmer winning something, wheelie contest or something, and Gary walking back, grabbing his plaque and smashing it on the ground just because John Zimmer was winning like everything, it felt like. But the other thing I remember was the first time I met you, we kind of saw you, like you were in the bathroom, you were hairspraying up the Mohawk, and I was like, that is the most ridiculous Mohawk I've ever seen in my life. But at the end of it, because you won, and I remember I didn't hear anyone like quite like you on the microphone on how it was genuine. Like some drivers get on the microphone, they're like, hey, it's all about the fans, and if you're having fun, that's great. And you can tell like that's just a line they think that they're supposed to say.
Right.
There was something different about your interview when you won and talking to your fans. I think you may have even gotten emotional at that point. And I don't know how many years that was for you driving, but you still got emotional, and like you were still so fan-centric that it makes sense to me that the very genesis of Mohawk Warrior started from you just loving your fans and then like pulling them into this process into your life and into this chapter. And I mean, it's massive kudos to you that it happened. I can imagine for years before I ever met you, when Mohawk Warrior got birthed, and even all the way through the end, like you've always been a fan first guy.
Well, thank you. And honestly, I prided myself on that, but I figured out right away. I mean, it's always hard to compete with the Gravedigger guys, right? No matter what, they put the best of the best drivers in there, and they always give great interviews. But I was fortunate enough how I kind of got brought into the sport was through Quad Wars. And so for like the first year or two, I did some Quad Wars. It was a portion they did during the show. And I did shows that Dennis was at. And Dennis, like, again, I know the something with the design of the truck that pulls the kids in. The kids love it. But Dennis's interviews were always genuine. And he never held anything back. And again, I love Tom Meents, but his interviews seemed, I don't want to say forced. He just had a different delivery. Like just Dennis was every shingle on the roof, and it was a genuine thing. Like he was the same way. He'd get emotional. And so once I got my shot to drive, I told myself I'm going to try to let my emotions show. And like I said when we started, I'm an emotional person to begin with. Like till this day, like I went 2 weeks ago, I think it was, that I saw you guys at Anaheim during opening ceremonies. I teared up. Like it happens. To me, my daughter's the same way. She gets happy. She gets teary-eyed. And little kids are like dogs, right? They can tell genuine people. And so I think that's kind of where I got, I wouldn't say lucky, but I did get lucky. Like I was born an emotional person, and the fans felt it, and they just kind of connected with me a lot. And I feel that's the same with you. Like I've told you, again, we haven't talked a lot, but I shoot you texts like, great interview. You show your emotion also, and that's what the people like. Like they don't want to see you get up and just say something. And for a while it got forced. I don't know if they still do it, but Tom always gave away a helmet after every run. And I was like, man, I want to do something like that to get up there with the fans and connect with them. So I started giving away my T-shirt off my back, and that's where the whole shirt off my back thing came about. And then once Monster Jam figured out that was good, that's when they started making the plaques. And all right, after you win, you got to go up there and give a plaque away. And it just didn't work with everyone, I think that got forced on. And do they still do that? Do they still have you guys go up there and give them away?
No. I haven't been up in the stands after a run. I haven't been up in the stands in probably a couple of years. I bet since COVID. But COVID changed everything. It felt like, and ever since then, they haven't gone back to that. I don't think it's a shot against the fans necessarily, but it'd be nice to come back with something like give me a T-shirt cannon or something. let's give them something. But I think you gave. I'm pretty sure that first event in Birmingham, you gave your shirt off your back to the kid.
Yeah,
so
I did
left
that
an
pretty
impression
quick.
on
I think
me.
I even did that in Escalade.
Okay, I remember thinking like, man, he's giving his sweaty shirt. Like hey, what's this kid gonna think and stuff. But again, it was so cool because it was different, and it was a clear message. And like sometimes, man, those messages, man, they stick with people, whether they get sweaty, gross post-event shirt or
Yeah.
not. Like, it's like, man, that guy literally gave the shirt off his back to the fans. That's cool.
Yeah. And so in fairness, though, what I would do is during intermission, I would go put a second shirt over my shirt because we do sweat in those fire suits. So
Yeah.
I didn't want to. One time, and it was a big show, and I didn't realize I had forgot to do that. And I got to my thing, who wants the shirt off my back? And as I started to peel it off, I was like, oh no, I don't have one on under here. But I was committed at that point, and so that's the one time where I actually peeled it off and didn't have anything underneath it. And I don't remember, like, I fluctuate in weight, like, and so I think it was a point where I was comfortable enough with myself. I was like, all right, I can take this off and run up there and not be a disgrace,
Yeah, I'm gonna look cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. All right, so go back to that Birmingham event then, and we could talk about years of stuff, but since we're on that same vein, good or bad, whatever. Because my first impression of you that weekend too, like I said, it was the first time I saw you and first time I kind of met you. I remember thinking like, this guy's very. I knew you were established in the sport. I knew the truck had a lot of attitude. I felt like you kept yourself pretty well. So like I remember thinking like, I probably won't mess with that guy. Like I'll probably just kind of leave him where he's at. And of course I felt like a duck out of water anyway. So I was more there just waiting to see and taking it all in. So that was my first impression, is like you embodied that attitude that the truck has in a way.
Yeah.
What was your first impression of me? Do you remember me back in Birmingham when I was in Mutt?
I 100% do. I remember that day pretty vividly, actually. And here's another reason why I remembered it, is I remembered being in your shoes also because, like I said, I did a few quad wars leading up.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't come from the sport, I didn't have, back then when I started, it was pretty much guys that were mechanics. When they come out with a new truck, they got bumped up to driving type thing. And so a few years before, they had brought in Chad Fortune, Medusa, and I think there was one other one that were like the first fly-in drivers. So when I came in as a fly-in driver, I wasn't accepted right away. I didn't have anything to do with the sport. I knew I kind of had a little bit, and like you, and I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but I kind of had a little bit of a drag racing background. My uncle builds pro stocks.
Okay.
So,
all right. I never knew any of this either.
Yeah.
How, again, like, this is outrageous that we've not. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. That's blowing my mind. Go ahead.
So we
And who's your uncle?
Ken Hoger race cars. So in the late 70s, early 80s, he built, do you know who Lee Edwards is, who was the IHRA pro stock champ for a while? He built all Lee Edwards cars. I actually worked on Lee Edwards cars as a young kid. So like when I was 13, 14, I would ride with my uncle to work on Saturdays, and I started welding on chassis and all that stuff. So that was about the only experience I had in that type of motorsports. But other than that, I knew nothing about the trucks, planetary gears, transfer cases, none of that. So the first time I met you, I knew that you would come from a drag racing background. I didn't know the whole background. But I remember looking at you going, man, that kid's nervous, and he doesn't quite know where he fits in yet. And if I remember correctly, you went out and had like the first show, you either won wheelies right away, or you won something, or you did really well right away.
I doubt it.
I think you drove good.
I don't remember. I remember crashing on my first wheelie hit. The hit, not even the first competition, the first actual wheelie hit. And everybody upstairs they were taking bets, and a lot of them had that I was going to crash first that night, and it was me. But that's all I remember about that whole weekend.
I just remember you looking nervous and you speaking really well, and I thought, man, he's gonna last a while. And then maybe I do remember you rolling. I thought I remembered you doing well your first show.
I can't remember any of the good stuff. Of course, I can't hardly remember any of the good stuff from that whole first year.
Yeah.
Maybe honestly, most of my career, I don't remember most of the good stuff. So that's surprising to me. Yeah, that's surprising that stuck in your memory somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe I did better than I thought I did. I don't know, but the nervous part was spot on. Yeah, and feeling like I was a duck out of water. I remember that being like, where am I?
I could tell you didn't know where to fit in, like
all that
stuff. And
Because there's no culture like the monster truck world. Like,
it is not.
There's not another motorsport that's like it. The culture is just totally different.
Yeah.
And that was my first real experience in that culture. Because even when I'd go to Paxton and do, auditions and testing and all that stuff.
So they had that when you started was Paxton.
Yes. That's the only reason
I'm around at that point.
See, I want to say I ran 2 weeks. I think I did 2 trips. Maybe there was a third, because the first one was just that, like a test where we did donuts, most of it, and interviews. And I think I may have backsided a race lane because they probably just wanted to see if, you were too much of a sissy to do anything else.
Yeah.
I think we did that the first weekend. Yeah. I remember typing out in my phone that first weekend. That was just off of race lanes and hitting maybe one backside of a race lane. I had a note on my phone about all the places the next day I was sore so that I could figure out how to, prepare.
Yeah.
I was going to go home and lift those areas, right? Like the certain part. It wasn't just like, my butt cheeks are sore or my hamstrings are sore. It was like, what part of my hamstring? Because then I was going to go back and train that. But yeah, it was that first week. And then when they brought me back, I never knew. They never told me how I did. So that was like let's call that May.
Yeah.
I didn't hear from anybody until August. And they said, hey, you did pretty good. We got a truck in mind for you, but we want to see how you do on the arena track. So then I went back up. I think I did 2 trips on the arena track before that Birmingham event.
And then now they run those guys a lot more now, don't they?
Yes. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's nonstop. And it's funny because a lot of people, I hear stories a lot about the ones that make it through and the ones that don't.
Yeah.
One of the coolest things now they're doing is simulators first. And it's like, man, how crazy is it to think that, we didn't have that to begin with? Because that would, think about how much cost that's going to save, right? So they're doing the simulators first. They're meeting them in person. They're letting them do some of the media and the PR stuff before they send them up to the actual test track. And I don't know how many total weeks that they're getting the new drivers, but I know that they, as many as like as deep as that file folder is, they would want it to be even deeper. I think they would want multiple backups for however many trucks they've got on tour right now. But it's an operation, man.
So when I drove, same thing. Like I kind of, with me doing the Quad Wars, I'd poke and prod and, hey, I wouldn't mind driving. And so they said, hey, you free this weekend? I said, I am. Well, we're doing a show up in Minneapolis. You want to come test drive? And so I said, heck yeah. So I rode with the TV crew in like one of those 14 passenger vans. We drove from Chicago to Minneapolis. We got there Friday afternoon. Friday they didn't run practice or anything like they do for you guys now. But after they had the track built and everything like that, I got into the Blue Thunder truck at the time and just drove in like figure eights, didn't hit anything. And finally they said, okay, you can go over one of the jumps that didn't have crush cars on it. I hit that once, backed it in, and this was December like 5th or 7th. And then like, might have been the day after Christmas, somebody got hurt or sick or something happened, and they called me up. They're like, hey, do you want to fly to, I want to say it was Reno, maybe? No, it was Dallas. It was an arena show in Dallas. You want to fly to Dallas and drive Spider-Man, and went and did a show.
Oh my gosh. The first go, huh?
The first go was in an arena, dasher boards. I was scared out of my mind, nervous. But yeah, it's definitely a lot different now. I'm glad all those guys get some time in the truck, because I can only imagine with the stuff everybody's doing now, the carnage that would be out there.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so that first time you drove in Minneapolis, was that in the Dome, you're saying? It was
in the Dome, yeah.
Okay.
It was in the Dome, and back then the tracks were, 2 car stacks with racing lanes. I think there was maybe a freestyle motocross landing ramp.
My gosh.
And then maybe like a wheelie bump, and then there wasn't the obstacles that there are now. So the one whole end of the floor was pretty much just flat. That, like I said, I just they asked me to do a few figure eights. They asked me to, in my mind, get as close as I could to the edge of the dirt pad without hitting the concrete. Just, I think they wanted to see if I could feel where my parameters were. and I never touched the concrete, and I got fairly close, and that was it.
Oh my gosh! And
I
what
don't
year
even
was
know
that
if
when
I
Spider-Man? Your very first event? That was
my very first event was Spider-Man. The
what?
first
What year?
for 2002.
Two. Okay.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah. 2002.
23 years of fly by, huh? I think that's the scariest part about all this stuff. And we're not going to fast forward to this, but I think the biggest eye opener for me post Mohawk Warrior, people have asked me all year this year, like, is it sad that you're not in Mohawk Warrior? I'm like, yeah, but I'm not. It's not like I'm heartbroken that I've had this change. The saddest part is how quickly time goes.
Yeah.
Like a big change like that makes you realize, gosh, man, 8 years can just fly by without you knowing it. So here we're talking about, 23 years. And I would imagine at some point you're like, you probably can't believe it's been 23 years. I'm trying to think back. I was in ninth grade in 2002. Yeah, I think I was in ninth, but you're not that much older than me, I guess, huh? Because how old would you have been in 2002? Would you have been?
I probably was. I don't know. I'm 53 right now. So yeah, I would have
Dude,
been
you're
30.
a young 53. Holy smokes. All right.
I don't feel a young 53, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm not, I feel like an old 37. So I came from, my dad's a chiropractor. Is that not like the most
perfect
God ordained thing you've ever heard?
Yes.
So I just got back from his office today, and I was telling him, because had a couple big crashes, this past weekend in Minneapolis, and like it beat me up pretty good. I just looked at him. I was like, I just do not know how people have survived, or other drivers do, how they survive without chiropractic care. But did you ever do chiropractic? I heard that you were pretty homeopathic. If people don't know, like more natural remedy kind of minded individual.
I do chiropractor a lot. Yeah, and you know what's funny is I haven't done one since I've stopped driving, but I definitely need one. I go get massages fairly often. When I raced moto, my senior year of high school, I broke my back in 4 spots, and so I've always kind of had back issues since then. But yeah, man, like your dad is a lifesaver.
Yeah,
chiropractor's the way to go.
Yeah, and I'm a family of chiropractors, so it's like my brother's a chiropractor. I've got 2 uncles and a cousin that are chiropractors. My grandfather was before he passed. Like, so yeah, we've got 2 others that are in chiropractic school, I think. So we've just always been more of a homeopathic type of family, like trying to find natural remedies and stuff like that, much more that way. But anyway, a side note. All right, so let's fast forward then. Let's talk about 20. It was really 2016 that the first time. Okay, there was tension. I remember even before anyone told me about Mutt or about Mohawk Warrior, right? Before those conversations even began, I remember knowing that there was a lot of tension between the company and guys like you, Medusa, Lee O'Donnell. Like there was just this big tension going on. And again, like you and I have talked about this in the past, it's hard because it's not like we can, it's not that we're trying to not give all the information, but more so just from your perspective, it sounded and looked like there was a kind of a fork in the road that was starting. Correct me if I'm wrong with any of that stuff, but at what point did you realize that maybe things were changing with Mohawk Warrior and with you staying or leaving? Were you looking to leave? Were you looking to change? All that stuff. What kind of started to percolate a little bit right around that 2016 timeframe?
So it's weird. I personally thought I was going to be in the truck until I was ready to quit driving. So I feel like some of the tension started, at least on my end. And I shouldn't say it started after this. So we talked a little bit about the action figures that we had. There was a Dennis, Tom, and myself action figure. And so that was on, I want to say, the marketing side or the licensing side. I'm not sure who, merchandising side, I think, is where it came from. The idea was from, I want to say, TD Lovett, who I think is still involved in the company on that end. Great guy. I love TD.
Yeah.
And he kind of came to me and said, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do Dennis and Tom for sure. And we feel like you're one that could sell some action figures too. So you interested in growing that route? I said I was. We set up a photo shoot where they take the pictures from all the different angles of your face and everything like that. And nothing was ever really discussed about extra compensation on that end.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, like even going further back, like there was always talk of wanting to get a little bit of merchandising. Like I just felt like, as well as other drivers did, like we were entertainers, but we were also salesmen. Like we're there to make the company money, right? So give us a little incentive to help you guys push your merchandise. Like I don't know how they could have done it. I'm sure there could have been a way to figure it out, but it was just never. It was shot down instantly anytime it was brought up by anyone. Medusa and Dennis, I think, were the spearheaders of that whole thing, trying to get more money from them, but also it would have gave us more as well.
Yeah.
So when this whole action figure thing came along, I was like, all right, well now it's not my likeness, it's not Dennis's likeness, it's not Tom's, like it's Tom, Dennis, and myself. The packaging, George Balhan, Tom Mentz, Dennis Anderson. So I kind of asked around, like, what's going to happen with sales, and and it was kind of implied, like, we're going to figure something out, we're going to figure something out, we're going to figure something out. The dolls hit. I call them dolls. People get offended. It's not a dolls in action figure, but the dolls hit at one of the world finals, and I think only 1,000 of them or something like made it for each one of us, just because they were trying to get them there. They didn't all make it there, and I think they all sold out first day they were gone. Like, all right, well, when's this going to happen? Never happened. Never happened. And Medusa, at the time, coming from wrestling, she had an entertainment attorney, and so I hired an attorney, and not to go after them. But I'm at the time, I was a kid growing up racing motocross. I wasn't an attorney. I wasn't a lawyer at the time. Whatever they were, Live or Fell Nation, they had a team of attorneys that drew up all these contracts for us, right? And they always expect us to sign them, not review them, not take them to our attorneys and have our attorneys go over them. And so when they sent me mine, I sent it to my attorney and I had him made some revisions and sent it over. And I got a call from one of the higher ups at Feld, and they're like, we won't deal with your attorney, we'll deal with you or no one. Like, it's your choice. This is your fork in the road. You can choose what to do. And at the time I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't think it was going to go that way. I really thought they were going to see it and go, you know what, you're right. You are a rarity. There's 3 dolls out there. You're one of them. So yeah, we'll negotiate your contract. We'll get you some type of residuals on the back end and move forward. I wasn't asking for T-shirt sales. I wasn't asking for Hot Wheels sales. It was just the action figure. I wanted a little piece of that. And I even went as far as to tell them, like, you guys always give me these contracts. I always sign them. You have a team of attorneys to protect your best interest. What is wrong with me having an attorney to protect my best interest?
Yeah.
And it was just, we don't care. We'll find somebody else to drive it or sign the contract. So I signed the contract, and it just kind of made me bitter from that point on. Bitter towards the company, and I never let it show to my fans or anything. And so that went on for a couple years like that. I can't even tell you what year that was, but that was definitely the start of the tension. And I never got an official reason why I wasn't let go, or why I was let go, or what actually happened. I've heard so many, same thing on your end. I've heard rumors, like one of the rumors that I heard, and again, I almost told you this on the conversation and I caught it, was that you were the one that brought great clips in. And so that was part of the deal, which that was one of the first rumors that I heard. And it came from people within the fleet side. So I'm like, well, maybe they have knowledge on it. But then I also, after I sat back for a little bit, I'm like, you know what, that's just not how Feld operates. Like,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have mattered who brought in the sponsorship. They would have put in whoever they want.
Yeah.
So how what's funny is when it came to a head, I thought things were good. I didn't think anything was wrong. I was told at the New York Monster Jam at MetLife Stadium that they weren't quite sure what the direction they were going to go with Mohawk Warrior, and they would let me know shortly. And so with that, I thought, well, okay, maybe Mohawk Warrior is going to go away. They're going to put me in something else. Wasn't sure. And then a few months later, I got a phone call from, and I'm going to leave out names just because I don't want to throw up red flags or anything like that, but I got a phone call from who did our booking and was told, hey, Great Clips is on board. We're going to have Bryce Kenny drive all of the domestic shows, but we're still going to have you drive all the international stuff. And I was like, are you kidding me? And he's like, no, but listen, the international tour is going to grow, and you're going to get close to the same amount of shows. They're just going to be overseas. And so at the time, I was like, cool, I get paid more for Europe anyway. I'm excited. I like going overseas. And I was good with that. And it was springtime, I think. And at the time, our European show started later in the year, like towards October. And I just happened to go on Instagram and I was scrolling and there was some international show somewhere. And I want to say maybe it was Tristan England driving the truck. And it was a Mohawk Warrior clip. And I was like, hang on. Like, I didn't even know that there was a European show going on. And so...
Hey, but the clip was of Mohawk Warrior running.
It was a clip of Mohawk Warrior
internationally
that they were at overseas.
It had to be, was it purple?
I think so, yeah.
I think it was Steve Sims.
Okay, maybe it was, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I made a phone call to the person who books this stuff and didn't answer the call. Tried a few other people, nobody answered the call. And then I just got a text message that said, I want to say it was a text message or a voicemail. At this point, it's kind of blurry because I tried to block it out because I was pretty upset at this point that I didn't even get a courtesy call beforehand. But basically, hey, we're going a different route and we don't have nothing for you. So I don't remember if it was a voicemail or a phone call or a text message. But yeah, that's the last time I talked to anybody really on the Monster Jam side from the company.
And then what was your first thought towards me? Like, if you knew that it was, because that would have been at the end of that first season, which was 2017, I think.
Yeah.
So it'd been maybe the back half of that year. But I guess you didn't have any information anyway across any of it.
No, I didn't. And then, well, so I did know because he did tell me that you were going to drive domestically. Yeah. And my thought towards you was, if I'm being honest, again, I'm an emotional person. I felt like, and I'll jump ahead a little bit. I'm so glad you carried on with not so much the tradition, but you being the man that you are, doing a lot with the Make-A-Wish kids and all that stuff. I wasn't sure of your personality. And that was one of the things that bummed me out. I'm like, man, I've built this fan base and I've done so much with these Make-A-Wish kids and everybody. Like, I wasn't sure if you were going to be that guy, that would do that stuff. So,
doing the
Make-A-Wish stuff.
Oh, gotcha. Not just that,
all that stuff. Yeah.
Not just that you weren't sure I had the personality type, like I'll call it a bad boy image. Was it some of that too, or just
maybe a little bit, and not so much the bad boy image, but
you will not offend me. You need to be as honest. Listen, I'd rather you be as honest about me as you want to be than anything else on this, because it's that. I mean, that's the real stuff. It's you and me talking, right?
And I don't think it's offensive, but I didn't. I'll say misfit. Like, not that I've ever felt like a misfit, but if you look at what I thought was my fan base at the time and me, we were a bunch of misfits, punk rock kids. Like, I don't know how many times, and this would always be my answer is, a lot of times a mom would come through the line with the son that had a mohawk, and she'd be like, hey, my son kept pushing me, and I like kind of mad at me, like I had to give him this mohawk. And my answer was always, the hair doesn't define the man defines the man. And so,
Pretty good. Yeah,
yeah, and
George.
that's kind of what I tried to tell the parents, like, you you see me walking towards you, you think, oh, look at this delinquent, tattoos,
Mm.
mohawk. And again, like, I'm a softie. My daughter can draw me the same thing for the 100th time and I'll still cry. Like, that's just who I am. So that's one of the things I'd like is I kind of give the parents a little jab, like, let the kid express himself. Like, just because he has funky hair and likes funky music doesn't mean they're not good people. Um, so I wasn't sure if you were going to lend that avenue to the Misfits, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, to give them something to root for and to look forward to and do that. Because again, I live in California. You're a good looking guy, right, Bryce? Like, you're clean cut, you're a good looking dude, you speak well. And so I'm like, well, is this like, what is this guy? Is he a jock? Is
Mm-hmm.
he preppy? Is he going to be able to go that route? So it wasn't that I was upset with you or mad with you or didn't think you were capable. I just didn't know what you had in you because I didn't spend enough time with you to know. They could have put in my brother, my uncle, my mom, and I would have been mad at the world at the time. It wasn't being mad at a driver. Um, but then I just went on to separate myself from pretty much everybody. So we had a group that we kind of called ourselves F4, the Fantastic Four, right? And how that came about was it was Damon Bradshaw, myself, Lee O'Donnell, Cam McQueen. When we would go to Europe, we would make it a point to go rent bicycles, go sightseeing, do a lot. And a lot of the crew guys, they work them so hard that they'd get done with the show. They'd go back to the room, take a shower, and go sit in the hotel lobby or restaurant or bar and would never sightsee or do any of that stuff because they were just exhausted. And that's just kind of what they did. But they started kind of picking at us. Oh, you guys are too good to sit with us. You guys are too good to do that. And so we're like, yeah, we're the Fantastic Four. So we went as far as one year we were going to make it the World Finals Mount Rushmore T-shirts, and we were going to put all four of our heads on them and wear them around. And I want to say Bradshaw's the one that dropped the ball on that, never got it done, but we'll blame Bradshaw. We always
Yeah,
like to
that
blame him for
sounds
everything.
good.
But so yeah, Damon got let go at the start of that first quarter. Same thing, they didn't want to bend on some contract negotiation stuff. Then I got let go at the end of first quarter, basically. And then Lee went on to win the next year's World Finals with the front flip, so that kept him in another year. And Cam, I think because of the thing, drove a few more years. But um, I couldn't even, like, the year that Lee won the World Finals, I promised him I was going to go cheer him on. And when it came time for me to go, I couldn't get myself to do it. Um, and it was twofold. One, I was angry at the world, but the other is, again, I would have been an emotional wreck there. I think I would have seen crew members, drivers that I didn't keep in contact with probably break down and cry just because, um, like you said, it's an industry that's like none other. Um, I always said that we were all family, right? Like it's a real family atmosphere. Um, Now that I've walked away, I don't want to necessarily say it's not, but it's not as tight knit as I thought it would. There's a handful of guys that we still talk and reach out to each other and stuff like that. But once that, I really thought no matter what happened after I walked away, like we were going to stay close and in people's lives, like it just didn't happen. And there's been guys that have come out here because I live about 30 minutes from Anaheim. And so I've reached out to guys like, hey, when you're in town, I'll come see you, say hi, and didn't get replies back. And um, you, Adam, Ryan, Tyler, this I shouldn't say there's a handful. There's quite a few guys that I still talk to that, um, but none of the crew guys really that I would have thought. And I know there's a high turnover rate of them anyway. Um, none of the officials or the people on the Monster Jam side. I do talk to a lot of the guys that are involved in Supercross still. Um, Two of my best friends are actually the one, Todd Gendro, who is now over Monster Jam. He started out as what Dave Prater is now in Supercross. But Todd and Dave, I'm still, Todd Gendro, Dave Prater, I'm still really close to. Talk to them every few weeks, via text messaging or what have you. Everyone, I think, now communicates via Instagram DMs and funny stuff that we send back and forth.
Yeah.
But
Funny
yeah,
reels.
I don't. It took me a long time to be okay with going, and again, you got the shaft, right? Like, I feel like going in, like you said, I had a strong fan base, and with it being an older fan base, they were opinionated, right?
Yeah.
Like, so now looking back on it, like, and I did scroll through and read some of the comments, and I wasn't happy at jabs towards you, but I was happy that my fans connected that much with me that they were that bummed about it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think for a little bit, I was probably hoping that people at the company were going to see that and be like, hey, you know what? Let's have a second truck and bring them back.
Yeah.
I guess that was a thought for a little while. But I wouldn't want to walk a mile in your shoes those first few years. Like, you handled it with grace and with a smile, and it was different than what I was doing. But again, once I started seeing all the stuff you were doing with Make-A-Wish and reaching out and going out on your own and speaking at different events, I was like, man, this guy gets it. Not only does he get it, you're a genuine person too. You weren't a robot that was thrown in there, and so I feel like it became a part of you. So I don't know if we're like a couple that we could be in a divorce group therapy together. Like, we both went through a divorce of something that was a part of us, right?
I think I think looking at the way, the fans did not receive me in this truck at the beginning. And it hurt because I left a corporate gig for it. I left a very safety net in my corporate gig, because that's how I was still working my corporate job in Monster Mutt. And then I did not bring Great Clips to the company, by the way. That's definitely not how that came about or why I was chosen. In fact, the only reason that Great Clips chose me was because Clay Milliken was the one that had the relationship with his team owner on the Top Fuel stuff, Doug Stringer, who ran that account for NASCAR with Great Clips for years. Yeah. And that was Clay's first trip back to a Monster Jam since his son Dalton, who drove Blue Thunder one season, after he got killed.
Yeah.
Yep. And Doug was not going to go to the event, and Clay was just like, just come with me, basically. He was emotional, right? I mean, you can imagine that as a father. And that's when Doug saw the Monster Jam event, and he was like, oh my gosh, this needs to be part of this. Now, where it all came about with me driving it was they gave them, 5 drivers profiles. Tom Mintz was the one that initially included me in that group of 5 profiles for Great Clips. And then they kind of kept coming back. They were trying to put Tyler Meninga in the truck, actually. And they kept trying to convince Great Clips to do it, but Clay remembered me from my drag racing days because it was my grandfather. I was a fly on the wall in the trailer for 8 years, and guys like Clay Milliken hung the moon for me. And he was the one that kept going back to Doug saying, I know Bryce, I know the family he comes from, like, he's your guy. And then Doug was the one that kept coming back saying, oh no, all he wants Bryce. And no one even knew who I was, because that first year when I was in Mutt, I wasn't even invited to World Finals.
Okay.
Like, to attend. I was not there to attend. In fact, Cam McQueen, that first year, he said, are you sure you're not supposed to go? You're on the rental car list. And I'm like, Cam, no, I've not heard a word. And I finally called the company saying, hey, they're saying I'm on the rental car list. Like, this was 2 weeks before Vegas.
Yeah.
And they said, no, we don't really have anything for you to do. Pauken's going to be driving Mutt. And, they basically said it in the nicest way possible. Like, no one knows you anyway. Like, they didn't say it anywhere like that, but I agreed with them. I said, yep, totally get it. And so we moved on. So I go from not even being invited to attend the World Finals to now a couple months later. And I don't remember when the conversation started, but it was later that year, they called me and they said, hey, we started talking about the following season. And the first idea was for me to go on an international tour in NEA Police.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not. That was the first idea. They said, we're not even sure that the truck's going to, we don't know what it's going to do and all this stuff. And I told them, I said, guys, I can't do that with my corporate job. I said, but look, I mean, if there's opportunities, I want you to just bring them to me. Let me say no. Don't assume I can't do something. And that's when they said, well, your name has been put forward on a sponsored truck with a new sponsor. And it was, they didn't tell me anything about it being Great Clips. And funny enough, dude, I told them no.
Oh, no kidding.
I was like, no, I said, I know what it takes. I cannot do that with my corporate gig. I know what it takes to run with a sponsor and be an ambassador. I don't think that's going to fit my corporate gig, but let me know. Well, then behind the scenes, about a month later, they call me again, and all those conversations that Clay was having and even Tom at that time, and they called me back and said, hey, they really want you to drive this truck. Are you sure? I told them no again.
No kidding.
I was like, no, I cannot do it. They didn't tell me Great Clips.
You knew at that point it was Great Clips?
I didn't know it was Great Clips or anything. And then another couple weeks go by, and they call me back, and they're like, Bryce, they've basically chosen you as the driver. Like, how are we going to make this work? And that's when I said, okay, who's the sponsor? Right. And then it kind of just evolved from there. But that was late in the year. I mean, I want to say it was October because I know I did not resign from my corporate gig until a couple days before the end of the year. And I went in to resign to the president of my firm. And so it was that late in the year. But I remember, so imagine that, Mutt, I was on the Forgotten Tour, as I called it, up in Canada. No one ever called us. I was with Cam McQueen and Sean Duhan. We had a great time.
Yeah.
Everything was just fun. I wasn't even invited over to the World Finals. And then I make this career decision, and I come into it, and I just get lambasted by the Mohawk Warrior fans and really the Monster Jam fans as a whole. And I tell you, I'm thankful looking back. It was one of the hardest things I've been through in my professional career was the first 2 years in Mohawk.
Yeah.
I remember that first year in Mohawk. If you remember this was the point I got, my heart got hardened, for a lack of a better term. And it was where Cynthia Gauthier and I got locked up in quads because I was on the triple threat season. That first contract, just for people's fun knowledge, that first Great Clips contract was almost like an associate sponsorship, though. It was not a full-time sponsor. That's why they still had the Moto Medal on the tailgate. It was not a full-time sponsored truck. And it was like a trial sponsorship, right? And so it was a 2-year contract, the first one. They get to the end of that first year, and it went so well, they ripped it up, and that's where they said, nope, we want the whole truck. Let's do that, and they put me on a stadium truck. But it was supposed to be 2 years on triple threat. Anyway.
So you did a year triple threat?
Yeah, and it was awful.
I don't remember that.
Oh, it was awful. So I got locked up in quads with Cynthia. The guy in the tunnel is waving us off, get off of the quads, because we couldn't. They were locked up. We couldn't do it. I get off the quad, and I walk toward the tunnel to get off the track. Cynthia stays out on the track and keeps messing with the quads, eventually gets them apart. She takes off. So she goes and posts a video of this happening. And I remember it vividly. The caption was, people ask me why I lift. It's reasons like this and blah, blah, blah. Never quit, blah, blah, blah. Well, in the video, it shows me walking off, basically in her caption, quitting.
Yeah.
And that's not how any of that happened. And then she takes off. It made me look horrible. So then a couple drivers get on there making comments, making fun of me, and you were one of them. And you were like, I remember your comment was, hey guys, that's the new guy, that's not me. To clarify, because guys were calling me, Joey Sylvester was calling me Cupcake, Bari Musauer. I had problem. Bari's the nicest human being. Yes. Maybe you and Bari. I don't know. I don't know who's nicer, ultimately. But Bari's the
Marius.
nicest human being ever. I did not like Bari Musauer for a couple years because my only interaction with Bari ever was him making fun of me on this video and making me feel like I was, a piece of crap. And laughing at Joey Sylvester's cupcake comment. That's what I remember. That's all he did. I think he just said, ha, 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 whatever. But it was your caption that made me feel like, okay, that guy's not a friend, he's a foe, right?
Yeah.
And now I can't, now I can't do anything with George Balhan. I can't do posts about the OG. I can't do this because this guy hates me and the world hates me, right? I felt like by the end of that first season, I felt like everyone wanted me to fail. The other drivers wanted me to fail. There were people in the company that wanted me to win. But that was pretty much it. I felt like the fans didn't accept me. The drivers didn't accept me. The crew guys, man, that was a bad year with crew, like all this stuff. And I'm going, George, I was like, I have made the worst mistake ever by leaving this corporate thing to go in and make this run. And thankfully, the Great Clips relationship was probably what saved me. The reason I'm still with this industry is because Great Clips, man, they were so ecstatic. And for 8 years of that partnership, I can tell you 100%, they always treated a breadcrumb like a feast.
Yeah.
And it made me want to work so hard with them. And maybe that vibe you got about me, in that transition, like I was a corporate guy, not corporate. Everyone thinks that like I'm a, Monster Jam corporate guy. It's funny. I probably give them more heartburn than anything else. But I understand the corporate structure, like the contracts and stuff. I like reading through that stuff because that's what I read. Yeah, I did that when I was placing CEOs in recruiting, right? So I was used to that stuff. So to come into this and then build that relationship with Great Clips, it was the chance to live being an ambassador and being a brand partner. And that's all I wanted in Top Fuel, and I failed at it. So the chance to build that relationship with Great Clips was what kept me around to this, and is the reason I'm here today. But that was my first instinct of like, okay, that George Balhan guy clearly must hate me. No one else is supporting me. I look like crap here. How do I move forward from this? And it was a very dark time in my life. I've always been a very strong believer in God, and I have a very close relationship with Jesus Christ. Like that is the reason I kept a head on my shoulders. And my wife, Mackenzie. Other than that, I cannot tell you how lonely it felt across the world, just across none of the categories in life were working. And that's all I had to hang on to. And looking back, I'm very thankful I had that. But that's genuinely, that's it. Do you remember that video by chance? It's funny that I'm bringing this up with the Cynthia Gauthier thing. Does that ring a bell at all?
I don't remember the specific of it, but I do remember making a comment, and I might have even made a few on a few posts. And first off, I feel like the biggest dipshit right now on the planet. I'm not allowed to say dipshit, but I just said it. But I'm sorry that happened. And again, it wasn't directed to you. It could have been my mom in that truck. And at that point in my life, I was angry. I can tell you, I remember one of the first times that I did fall in love with you, though, was I think you spoke at a Callaway conference or something like that. It wasn't even a Monster Jam thing. And I remember you posted the video or part of the video but I came across the video and I'm like, that dude's got it. Like that dude can talk. He's not in a Monster Jam event. You were at, I want to say it was Callaway Golf Clubs, at like one of their conferences or whatever. And I don't even know if Callaway had anything to do with Monster Jam at the time or how you ended up there, but I was like, this dude is talking to, and it's different because I've done it. I've done it at Advanced Auto Parts. I've done it at a bunch of other NGK, a bunch of other sponsors where you go into an event like that and you're speaking to people that are involved in Monster Jam and you're going to know. And I thought, man, he's up in front of a bunch of corporate golfer guys that probably don't know anything about Monster Jam. And you didn't have a sweat on your forehead. You just, you crushed what I saw. And I was like, this dude's got it. And I think that was the turning point for me with accepting um, somebody else in the truck. And again, it could have been my mom. It could have been anyone. At some point, I was going to do it. Um, but man, I don't remember that exact comment. But I knew I did let um, the best of me get, the best of it get a hold of me at one point, and I did make some type of comment on it. And it wasn't that I wanted to see you fail. I think I was glad that the fans and some of the guys had my back. And looking back on it, that's just a stupid reason. Like, your friends and family are who your friends and family are. It don't matter. I don't need the love of people I don't know or the acceptance. It's, ones that, again, looking back on it, I realize you did take that on as your baby. You didn't, obviously, I knew you didn't ask to be put in that position, but I didn't know that you also turned it down 3 or 4 times, which makes it even that much more special, because I think just about anybody that was driving at the time, if they would have said, "Hey, George is out, you want the Mohawk Warrior," like, who wouldn't want that? Again, I wouldn't have foreseen the fans acting the way they did at first. I would have thought anybody that jumps in has got an instant fan base, handed to them. So who wouldn't have wanted that? But then once it hit and I saw the way they were treating you, I was like, that's,
Well, the good news is like I think that even in the worst situations in life and across the board, like, it doesn't have to be monster trucks, but the worst situations in life, I think there can always be a positive. After the first couple of years, I had nothing to lose.
right.
So it honestly put me in a good position to say, man, so what could I do here? Like, if I just, if people aren't accepting me, then, because and from the very beginning, that's what I also told the company at the first. I'm like, I'm not going to be anybody else. Like, I'm not going to try to be George. I'm not going to try to match his Mohawk, and I'm sure the last year, like, I had 8 years with that truck, and I guarantee the last year people were like, when are you going to grow your Mohawk out? Like, it just never stopped. And I always went like, dude, I'm going to wear my Mohawk. I'm going to do my thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't have anything to lose. When people were at the bottom of their experience, like, it might force you, I always use the verbiage like finding your next gear. Dude, it forces you to shift into something else. And that corporate stuff where you talk about, I cannot believe that it was the Callaway live show. That's what it was. They do this in-studio show. And I sat beside on a plane one time coming out of Chicago from a guy from Callaway, and that's how it started. And he was like, what do you do?
Kidding.
Yep. And I was like, I finally told him, and it snowballed into me eventually being on that Callaway live show. It's funny because that was so much fun, and it never hit. Like, if you go on the YouTube and find this video, it's still only got, maybe it's got a couple thousand views at the most. But it was a great thing. We had a Mohawk Warrior RC truck.
Cool.
The guy out in California. Oh man, I wish I could give him a shout out right now on this, but he's a big RC guy. He met us there with a Mohawk Warrior truck. Monster Jam wasn't involved. They were involved. So they approved it. I went there representing them. They kind of took that PR opportunity, but all of a sudden it helped me find that gear of like, man, there's a whole corporate world out there that doesn't see Monster Jam in the favorable light that they should.
Right.
So my mission here is that I want to change the perception of monster trucks in corporate America, because I think it's the most powerful marketing tool, the most powerful brand ever, right? Globally.
And I fully agree with that. And I don't know who we need to wrangle and wrestle to get the Monster Jam and more on that. Again, with me not being involved, I feel like I could speak a little more freely. I feel like there's always like a struggle with Monster Jam corporate wanting to keep the drivers wrangled in and not realize how much they're actually worth, right? And so once you start sticking guys like you out there, or Barry's a great speaker, anyone that's a great speaker, the company is doing the company an injustice by not setting them in more situations like that.
To change the perception.
Like you used to tell people, I drive a monster truck. Oh, what's that like? It's, people would, kids would love it, but corporate dads would look down on it. And I feel like I thought a lot more once I moved out here, because Southern California, like, fashion, everything is Hollywood related. So they look down on you like, oh, you're a hillbilly racing a truck, type thing. And just come to a show, check it out. Just come to a show and check it out. And then they'd bring their family, and first thing they'd usually say to me is, I'm sorry, I had no idea. And I just feel like if more guys like you can get out there and spread the word, it's going to make you worth more money. And the more sponsors you bring in, the more money the company should compensate you for it. But as a whole, it's going to make the company a heck of a lot more money in the long run, type thing.
And the hard thing is that direction, that the hardest lesson I've had to learn, because everything you just said is my heart. It is what gets me out of bed. It's why I work as hard as I do. It's why I've become a speaker. It's why I wrote a book. Like, everything I do is trying to be a better communicator, right? Yeah. I want to use this platform I've got to, if I change one person's life or just help them get unstuck, like, that's worth it to me. And I work so long at what I do, no one will ever know. And I'm proud of that. I don't ever have to talk about that, because it's the stuff that no one sees that makes me know that people are going to be like, where'd that come from? It's like, dude, I've been grinding for 10 years at this and watching everything I have. But here's the hardest lesson I've had to learn. Just because I see that perception and I say, man, we can change that perception in corporate America about monster trucks, it doesn't mean that the company has that same objective in that same way. And we've
Correct.
seen this shift as a business, because Mohawk Warrior, the thing I always heard was that it's funny that you were doing so much and selling so much merch, because I have heard the opposite of like, well, it doesn't sell enough merch. Like, it's not, and I'm always like, but y'all never have it at events. Like, how are you supposed to sell merch when I can't find merchandise to push for you guys? But go ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah, no. That was one of the things that I heard at the end when they kind of first started talking about it, is, well, we're not selling the merch like it used to. I said, I go to shows and my merch isn't there anymore. Yeah. Like, of course you're not. You can look at the numbers and say you're not selling them. Well, if they're not there to sell, of course they're not selling. You look up at the board and they've got, and this is what never made sense to me, is you look up at the board and there's 15 different Gravedigger t-shirts, right? And then they may have one Monster Mutt shirt and one something else. Well, if somebody loves Gravedigger and they want a Gravedigger shirt, give them 2 Gravedigger shirts, but have one shirt of, like, why do you have 8 trucks at an event if you're only going to sell 3 other t-shirts? Like, just do a full year of having the same amount of everything there, and
see where it falls.
The company makes the same amount of money, whether they sell a Gravedigger shirt, a Monster Mutt shirt, Stabilizer shirt, whatever that shirt may be. If it's a company-owned truck, they're going to make the same amount of money on it. So,
well, and that message you were getting about the merch was the same thing I had heard about.
Yeah.
About why it was. So I had originally heard, I didn't say this part, about the transition year, but I had heard it was going away. Now, again, and people, I know I've given too many disclaimers, but
right.
I do care. Like, I care the fact that these are things that, these were understandings we had, but neither of us had the total picture, right? So there's always going to be more to the story and more to everything and whatnot. But my impression was that the Mohawk Warrior was going away. They were not that they were trying to get away from the bad boy image, but we're seeing that recently, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing that the attitude, the trucks, and that kind of personas changing. And because Great Clips originally did not want the whole truck, because they spent so much time in NASCAR and kind of got burned from it, they were afraid to do a whole truck. And that's where they were like, well, I mean, we've got, Mohawk Warrior over here that's really being, sidelined essentially. And that, again, those are my words. Yeah. But we've got this truck, like, what if we just put it on the side of that existing brand? It's got a Mohawk on it. Your Great Clips, like, we could kind of try it out. And that's what eventually allowed them to. So I always said, from everything I understood it to be, that Great Clips saved it. Like, having that partnership kept the truck around probably 8 years more. The problem is because you and I don't have the whole picture of things, we don't know that that's 100% true. Like, we don't know that, okay, if Great Clips ripped up the contract before they signed it, does that mean George Balhan was not going to compete at all in 28 or 17? And, like how that could have transitioned, and you just never know. Or maybe it would have been sidelined by 2018 or something. But that's what we just don't know, because we don't have the same business objectives as a company that runs 55 trucks out there that's trying to keep it a profitable business. And people hate to hear that, but man, I am thankful for what it's worth, and I'll be done and let you respond to what I just said, because I want to hear your thoughts, and I'm sure everyone else does too. I'm thankful that Monster Jam has figured a way to be as profitable as possible, because when I look at NASCAR, NHRA, Formula One, the only reason Formula One is growing right now is because of that Netflix documentary.
Yes.
That's it.
Absolutely.
They've not figured out how to make that a profitable business. Like, Monster Jam has figured out how to make it profitable, and I'm thankful for that, because it makes the sport continue to grow. But it's hard for us as fans and drivers and everything else to go, well, yeah, but we want it to feel this genuine competition. It's like, yeah, but eventually, if I tear up too much stuff, someone's going to call me and say, dude, you have caused hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage. Can you just not roll it this weekend? And that should be okay for them to make that phone call to me as a driver. So anyway, but go back to what I was just saying, if you had any thoughts on the other stuff. But
no, absolutely. And honestly, like, at the time, if they'd have just not hired me and the truck would have gone away, I probably would have been happy at that moment. Now I can honestly say that since I've come to terms with everything and all that good stuff, is I'm bummed it's not out there anymore, because it kind of was still my way to relive and be involved in Monster Jam, right? Was even I didn't do my hair last weekend when I went to there, but when I would still do my hair, I would still get recognized at the events, which felt great. But my daughter never got to see me drive, so she was always stoked when she got to see the truck out there, because that used to be her daddy's truck. So now I'm honestly bummed it's gone. If they would have taken you out of that truck and stuck you in something else, I probably would have made a few phone calls and said, you guys are making a mistake. You wouldn't have gotten this phone call from me 8 years ago, but man, Bryce is the one that needs to be in that truck. But yeah, it's a company, right? They need to make money, and they need to bring in new sponsors and do whatever they have to do. And you are going to get those phone calls. It's never going to go back to the way it used to be. And I think that the direction it's going is going to be a great direction. It's just kind of got to let it play out. I got a funny story about sponsorships, and I don't know if you know it, and I've talked to a few people, but the JCB deal.
Nuh-uh.
So I grew up racing, and I have a really good friend. His name's Rod Emery. He builds custom Porsches, classic Porsches. He's so good that he restored the Porsche that Porsche won Le Mans with, restored it for the company. He's world-renowned Porsche builder. And he called me one day and was like, hey, I got a friend of mine I build cars for. He's a client. They're from Europe. They've gone to a few Monster Jams, and they want to get involved in Monster Jam. Do you have somebody you can put me in contact with? I was like, well, who is this company? He said, it's JCB. They make dozers and back end loaders and this, that, and the next thing. I was like, man, what a great fit. Yeah, absolutely. So I called my friend Todd Gendro, and I said, hey, I don't know what it's worth or what's going to happen, but this buddy of mine, Rod Emery, is a legit guy. I don't feel like it's just somebody that's, for him to reach out to me, I feel like it's probably a good opportunity, that there's maybe some traction there. And here's his number if you want to call him. And Todd's like, yeah, I'll give him a call. And about 3 days later, I got a call back from Rod. He said, I talked to your buddy. Everything went great. And I'm putting him in contact with the guys at JCB. And
my gosh, that's how it started?
That's how it started, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
So if that doesn't tell you I'm not bitter, because I could have been really bitter and been like, nah.
Yep.
They jacked me over. And if that would have happened a year or two after that I got let go, I probably would have been like, nah, they burned me. And so again, with me maturing, I understand it. it's business. I'm at a great point in my life. I wouldn't be where I'm at right now if, like you said, all the things didn't happen that got me to where I'm at. Um, but it could have been very easy for me to be bitter and be like, no, that's not who you want to go with. And I feel like Rod is a good enough friend that if I would have said that, he probably would have maybe called them back and been like, hey, I talked to my buddy. He said that the company's going in a different direction and maybe you don't want to be involved. Um, but I didn't. And yeah,
Oh my gosh. The reason why that's so powerful too is like that. I mean, they are the golden child, like, and JCB, everything that they're doing, and they're an endemic sponsor in my opinion. Like they're a good enough brand where,
yeah,
I'm getting a little tired of some of the brands, and I probably shouldn't go down that route, but like we're a good enough sport that we should have big name brands,
yes,
and
absolutely.
JCB I think is number 3 in that category. And I love helping, like BKT tires. No one knew BKT until they got into Monster Jam, and now
Right.
like they're way more of a household name. I love that part, but
Yeah.
BKT was already a huge brand overseas.
No, correct.
But we helped grow. Let's see, we helped quadruple their revenue in the United States in their first contract, BKT's first contract.
No kidding.
That time frame, we
Wow.
quadrupled their revenue just here in the States. That's massive, right?
Yeah,
It's going to
and
help.
I believe it. I
Yeah,
believe it because again, I believe in the brand. Like it when you're doing it every day, like, and you see the fans and you're like, yeah, they left happy, but whatever. But again, now me going as a fan, uh, it's huge. Like I don't understand a company not going to like, um, I saw your run from, was it Saturday night that you had that spectacular big air and truck went over and everything like that?
did I save it or did I
Yeah,
crash? Did I?
remember? I think it
Was,
crashed. I think it
not
ended up
Anaheim? You
upside.
talking about this past weekend?
Yes, this
Or
past weekend.
yeah, I think that was Sunday. Yeah, the
Yeah,
body came off of it and stuff. Is
yeah.
that? Yeah, that was
Like
Sunday.
either there or like at the show in Anaheim on Sunday where it was a sold out show. Like, how do you not watch runs? As if I owned a corporation and I sat there and you get done with your run and you climb out of your truck and you stand on top of your truck that's mangled and you've got 65,000 people going bananas for it. How do you not go, how do I get my name on the side of one of those trucks or on one of those banners? Like it's, it's mind boggling to me that there's not
Yeah.
more sponsors involved.
Well, half of it is that the value add in motorsports has changed. Sometimes I think
Yeah,
we get put in between entertainment and motorsports. So
for
some
sure,
people,
dude.
like some companies, look at us and go, "Well, we've tried motorsports before. We're not interested." It's like, wait,
Right.
but this is totally different. And then
Yeah.
other people are like, "Well, we're more focused on live streaming and gaming and stuff like that." And it's like, I mean, there's that's here in Monster Jam too. Like there's
Yes.
everything here. So again, some of that's that perception, and I think they're going through different doors than I expected them to do in terms of growing that brand. But
Yeah.
man, you've always been so good with brands too. Because I want to go back to Anaheim here in just a second and us last year. But before I do, I've got just a professional question for you. Like Moto Metal, I'm pretty sure that was your relationship too, right? That was originally on
Also,
Mohawk.
it was originally on Mohawk, but one of the sales guys, Dave Mewey, who's still involved in the company, and I think he does more supercross stuff.
Supercross, yeah.
He he got that conversation going, and then I met with the Moto Metal guys, and we clicked. So I'd like to say I kind of had a hand in the part of maybe finalizing the deal, but the first time they came out to a show, like we do like we always do, we kind of oversell to them. Um, but yeah, like they went as far as to give me stuff for my personal vehicle after the fact, and
Yeah.
um,
But
yeah, I've always been decent with them.
you were
Yeah,
good though with like that's the other thing that I noticed about you through the years and looking back on that stuff too. Like you were always very good with brand relationships.
yeah.
Why do you think you were so good with was it after the fact or was it like bringing them on board? What would you say your best skill set was when it came to brands? Because most people are not good with partnerships.
Yeah. I would say I was good at probably helping finalize deals, and I think it comes back to like me being a genuine person. And like I remember we did a dinner at a very fancy restaurant with Advanced Auto Parts when they were on board, but they were either getting ready to renew the sponsorship for another year, something like that. And it was myself, Lupe Souza, and then some of the bigwigs at Advanced Auto Parts, and the head sales guy that did the deal, Rossbach, was a sales guy, and I think he still is.
Yeah, he ran the Great Club stuff too. So
yeah, he's such an awesome dude.
Yeah,
and
been around a long time.
He's a shark, man. He landed some of the biggest deals in Monster Jam. Like, he did a great job. But he took us to Ruth Chris Steakhouse, and so there's me with my Mohawk, Lupe Souza, and these executives at Advanced Auto Parts, and we were talking about something, and I made a joke, and it was kind of a risque joke, maybe, but I don't even remember what it was, but it just kind of slid out of my mouth. And I remember Rossbach looking at me, and the Advanced Auto Part people just laughed. Like, it just came out naturally. So I think they, as corporate as everyone is, when they get home and they hang off their coat, like, everybody's just normal people. You're a normal driver. You don't sleep in your driver's suit. Like, you're a normal dude. You don't go to the grocery store in your fire suit. Like, so we're all normal people. So I think everyone likes to be treated like a normal person. Like, you go into a dinner and the sales guy's job is to bend over backwards for them, kiss their butt, make sure they're happy. And I felt like I was there for me and my personality. And I just tried to be genuine and treat them like I would treat any of my friends I was having dinner with. And I think that's kind of just what always helped me with sponsors, was I was just me. I was genuine. I treated them like I would treat anybody, or I'd want to be treated myself. Like, make me laugh. Let's have some fun. Let's talk about good times, talk about bad times, get to know each other, and not just sit there and blow smoke up their butt,
Yeah. And do you think that's why you would go in? It's clear to me that you would go in and you wouldn't be intimidated by position. No. You would just go in to make a friend, almost.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think the only time I was ever intimidated by anybody was, and it wasn't for a sponsorship. I just happened to be in the office one day at Feld, and it was before Feld, and I had my back to the door, and I heard the one VP walk up, and he's telling the guy, "Oh, this is George. He drives one of the trucks." I think I was still driving Escalade at the time. He's like, "George, I'd like you to meet someone." Now, Chicago kid, born and raised. Stand up, turn around, and reach out my hand before I can see it, and it's Michael Jordan.
Oh my
gosh! I just, like, I never froze. I've never done anything, and my mom just passed away from brain cancer, and we grew up pretty poor. I wouldn't say by nowadays standards we were, but I didn't know it. Like, we were, I don't even know what you would classify it as, but my mom always found a way to, we would go to 1 or 2 basketball games a year. We'd sit as high as you can sit in the old Chicago Stadium, could barely see the floor. But we love Michael Jordan. Like, we love Michael Jordan. So I turn around, I stand up, I reach out my hand, and I just said, "My mom loved you." That's all I got out, was "My mom loved you." Like, he walked away, and I'm just like, "Oh my God, what an idiot." Like, he probably had to think, that was the one time I was like, he probably just went, "Yep, those guys hit their head too many times," or something like that. Like, my mama loves you. Like, I felt like Bobby Boucher, like, just like the one person that everyone says, "Oh, who would you like to have dinner with?" one time, and he would just be like right there at the top of my list, and I fumbled that one.
Oh man, that's a good one. He was there in the offices though.
He was there in the office at the time.
I wonder why.
They had at the time, they had their hands in a lot of different things, and they actually they were in charge of the like Road America Road Race series or something like that for motorcycles. He had a best friend growing up that was into motorcycles, and so they were going to start a team, and they came to Feld and like, "How do we start a team?" And so he was there for one of the meetings on putting together the at the time, I guess it was getting his foot into motorsports, and he has a NASCAR team now and everything, as far as I know.
I remember when he was in motorcycle racing. I remember thinking, like, why did Michael Jordan get into that? But so that's interesting. That would have been that same time frame, I bet.
Yeah, that's why he got involved in that. And I don't know how he ended up in NASCAR, if it's just because he loved the racing aspect of it and went over. But
the North Carolina boy. How can you be from North Carolina? That's where I'm from, right? How can you be and not be in some sort of racing? It's just in our blood somehow. But
yeah, I even loved him when he was at North Carolina. I had you're gonna be proud of this. I had a North Carolina Tar Heels starters coat that I wore all the time, man. I was
just because of
hardcore
Jordan.
just because of Jordan.
Just so that was back in college then, right? Or you're
Yeah,
saying when he was in college? No, you would have been too young for that because he was in the.
Oh,
When was he at Carolina?
I remember. Like, so I even saw them in the '84 Olympics out here in LA. My mom and dad and I came out for it because my aunt lived out here, and the company she worked for had tickets to the Olympics. So I would have been 12 at the time, and yeah, we came out here and watched men's basketball.
Yeah,
got to see Michael Jordan playing.
Oh my gosh. This isn't near as cool of a story. I will say the only time I would tell you that I've gotten intimidated the last several years was we were filming a show. Mohawk Warrior was in it, but it was on ABC. Ended up being a terrible show. Like the show itself was just terrible, but it's where they'd take professional athletes and they would put them in ribbon dancing competition just to watch them do something that's not innate to what they do. And they had Gronk was in Mohawk Warrior. They had Keegan-Michael Key was the host of the show, and it was on ABC. I wish it's not even worth trying to remember what the name of the show was. But the other competitor in that show was Venus Williams.
Oh, no kidding.
And for some reason, of course I had Gronk and I hit it off. Like we just were buddies. Keegan-Michael Key, awesome. Off camera, all that on camera, right too, but off camera, the dude was awesome. Even Venus was over there, super nice. I don't know why. It was like I couldn't talk to Venus Williams. I was like, I for some reason, she was just the most impressive human being I've ever met. I knew she's a tennis superstar and all that stuff, and she was super nice. I made myself go over and just say, "Hi, I'm Bryce Kenny. I drive that truck," and she was so nice and sweet and all that stuff. But dude, I just looked at Venus going, that is just a rock star, all-star human being. So anyway, that's my Michael Jordan story. I would absolutely be intimidated by Michael Jordan though, for sure. That would freak me out. So I think he probably got out more words than I would have been able to.
Yeah, I don't even know if I would have been as intimidated if I would have known, but it was like it would have been like him walking up behind me right now type thing. Like you could have said, "I'll give you $10 million if you can guess who was standing behind you right now," and I would have never have said Michael Jordan. Just never would have.
No way. I love it. All right. So let's go back to Anaheim for a second. So last year, was that 2020? Was that 2024? Was that the first time back? That was last time, wasn't it? Anaheim 2024.
So, maybe it was 2023.
That's what maybe I'm like, man, surely
it's not 2023.
Was it? Okay. And you and I had randomly texted each other these last 8 years. Like I remember when the Moto Metal guy passed unexpectedly. I don't think it was from COVID, but your main contract, and I'm blanking on his name, but he was an awesome guy. And I remember meeting him my first World Finals. He came up to me. He was like, "Hey, I'm with Moto Metal, and just wanted to introduce you to him." But I remember you being close with him, and I remember like texting you after I saw that he passed. And just being like, "Man, I know you knew him. I hate to hear that. I'm sorry." Like little things like that. You would randomly text me about things that you would see, and we just kind of had like a friendly dialogue about that.
Yeah.
But going into that Anaheim year, you texted me, and it was the first time I was like, "Oh my gosh, I could feel it. I could feel something different." What made you?
Yeah.
Was it Roxy? Like, was there something going on with you as a dad with Roxy that started to make you want to reach out and for us to kind of come together? Because I felt something different in that first time you reached out to me 2 years ago.
Yeah. So, like, this is going to sound really weird, but for years afterwards, like, dude, I would have these, like, dreams about Monster Jam. Like, I'd be at a show and I would forget my fire suit, or I would show up and my truck wouldn't be there, or I'd miss intros, or, like, I was having all these random weird nightmares for years, and never really dealt with my mom passing away. And so I went and started talking to a therapist, right? Trying to get over the hurdle of my mom passing. And then with that, like, I just realized I never got closure. Like,
Mm.
I never got closure with that. I never got closure with my job. Like you said, 23 years at the time, it was 17 years or something. I had been driving 16 years. It's a big portion of somebody's life, right? Um, and I just never had an actual closure of, um, this chapter's done. Like, I think that there was still mixed up feelings. That I guess at that point I had grown to, um, um, just get a more realistic thing on, like you said, corporate's corporate with what happened. I'd grown to really enjoy watching you do what you did, and I just thought it was important for me to finally embrace that a part of me was still out there, and that the one, um, you were the one driving the ship at that time. And uh, I don't think a lot of people know, but like, I saw you in the pit party. You asked what we were there for. It was my daughter's birthday. We had some friends that had just lost their father to brain cancer, and you're like, I'll come up there during intermission. Like, yeah, I know you get pulled in a lot of different things. You don't have to. And dude, you did. You showed up, and it was awesome. Like, I think I cried at that moment, but like, it just, you had said some great words, and it was just like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. You're gonna have that. I was like, Fudge, I, I, I let 6 years go by of being angry at the world and not giving this guy an opportunity. Not because it just, like, it could have been, like I said, it could have been my brother, my mother in there, and I wouldn't give him that opportunity. And I was just like, I wasted all this time where I could have had this great relationship with someone that is way more like-minded that I was, that I would never have thought. And I was kind of bummed in myself that I let that happen. So when all that happened, I was like, this guy's a good dude. Like, he's really a good dude, and he's somebody that if he lived near me, I'd go to dinner with him and his family, and it wouldn't just be hey, I want to go see him at Monster Jam. And again, the same thing could be said for Adam and Ryan. There's a handful of you guys out there that, now looking back on it, that these people are my people. Like, they're ones that reach out to me, check on me periodically. My DM feed, I'd say 50% of the stuff comes from Ryan. Like, we rifle each other back funny things on Instagram all the time.
Ryan's algorithm is messed up, though. We got to admit that. The stuff that he said,
it is.
How is your feed giving you these videos? That's crazy. But
Right.
yeah, continue.
Well, I'm sure some of the stuff that he might send to you might come from me. So
okay, all right, that's yeah. So you're the reason his algorithm's that bad.
The only reason his algorithm might be messed up, but like, I don't know. We joke with some of the other guys that it'd be nice to just pick a spot once a year, and all of us that are kind of now close or closer, like, let's go hang out away from an event, or go do something. So, but yes, Rexy was a big reason for opening my eyes on a lot of things. And I'm not gonna lie, like, I went through, before Rexy came into the world, I did. I was drinking more than I should have drank, and I'm not one of those people to put blame on anything, but I'm sure alcohol might have had some type of influence in that comment I made on that post at the time. Like, when I stopped driving, I wasn't doing anything else. So where I live is kind of a party town, and we'd go out at night and sleep till noon the next day and have fun. I have some friends that are involved in different industries where they were kind of the same. They traveled for a living. So when we were home, that's what we do. We'd go sit at the beach, and there's some restaurant / bars along the beach that, when I was driving Monster Jam or whatever, we'd give them Monster Jam tickets. They'd come, and in return, we had open floodgates for food and drinking. And so it was just way too easy to do. And, I got a second chance at being a father again in life, and doing stuff, I wouldn't say correctly, because I don't think I necessarily did stuff incorrectly in the beginning. Just traveling was my life, and that's all I knew at the time for my boys growing up. But Now I've got the opportunity to pick up my daughter from school, take my daughter to school. My wife just had her hip replaced on Friday. Um, so I'm here for her physical therapy, and I'm sure she's gonna say I wasn't here for her right now, but
Yeah, yeah. I've taken an hour and a half of
yeah,
your life, so
yeah.
I'm gonna have to send Crystal a bouquet or flowers or something.
But yeah, like she just seeing the world through not only her eyes, but through her eyes because she's a girl. Um, she's made me again. I was always an emotional, sympathetic person, but just to see it through the pure like, and everyone says, "Oh, my daughter's special, my daughter's perfect," but there's just the way she looks at life is amazing, and so yeah, like I saw the way she looked at you and looked at the truck, and I want to go to Monster Jam. I was like, all right. So I put on my big boy pants and I went back to that was the first Monster Jam I'd been back to since then. So
Yeah, and to your point, so I got two of those things wrong. First of all, I called her Roxy a few minutes ago, not Rexy. That's my fault. Second of all, you're right. You didn't text me first. I remember now because I turned around and you're standing there.
Yeah.
At the pit party, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
it's George Balhan. Like,
yeah.
Does anyone? Everyone stop! Turn the music off. Like George Balhan standing here. I think it was amazing to me how you immediately like, hey man, like I don't want to interrupt you, or like you were so humble, and I was the one that was like, no, what? Stop! Like, it's time out, everybody. Like, do you guys know who this is? And I think I was blown away by your humility in that moment. That I was like, okay, if you're not gonna let everyone know who you are, I will. Like and make sure that the world that's here in this parking lot knows that how big of a deal you are. There was something so healing for me when I got to come up to the suite, because after I saw you at pit party and we got to just hug each other, and I saw you as a dad. Like I saw how excited Rexy was. I saw how proud she was of you. Like seeing with the truck standing there and all that stuff. That was so healing for me. I remember coming up to the suite and you had that place packed out.
Yeah.
But I was blown away because it was like, you were like, oh man, hey, yeah, come on in. Guys, this is Bryce. And it's almost like you were proud of me in that moment. And it threw me off because all I was wanting to do was tell everybody that you were the real rock star. And I remember saying that. I remember being like, look, I don't care how cool you guys think I am or Adam is out there or any of these other trucks that are here this weekend. Like this guy. And I said, and I know it's one of the few times, don't tell the Andersons I said this because they can't believe, like they try to get me to cuss sometimes. I'm like, it just doesn't come out. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't come to my mind. I say Christian cuss words like frick and dang it and stuff like, but I remember telling everybody, I was like, I don't care what you think of any of us this weekend. Like this guy, George, is the biggest badass of anybody that's in this stadium today. And you guys are in the same suite with them. And like, it was just fun to be able to, I feel like, if I had a regret over these 8 years, and I promise I had plans to like honor you in the process. And it felt like every time, like all of a sudden we just, stub our toes and trying to get to that point, and I would, and all of a sudden I'd be hurt. Like I wish that I wouldn't have gotten hurt by a silly post that Cynthia made in a comment. Like that's a regret I have. I wish I wouldn't have let that stuff get in the way of me showing you more honor than I wanted to in that moment. And I think so much of that built up in that moment in Anaheim to just be like, this is my chance. And I'm saying it to a suite, but it felt like I was saying it to the world. Like this guy has given his heart and soul to a lot of fans, to a sport, and to so many people. And like, and I don't think any of us had a chance to not only like honor you in that way, but also like the other drivers too that are not like Gary Porter. Like have we had a chance to like celebrate Gary and all that stuff? And I think the answer to that is no. You said it earlier. It's like once that chapter ends, it just changes things so much. And I regret that we haven't had a chance. I hope like conversations like this, I hope the fans that actually listen to a 2-hour podcast like this, they get to look at that and just not only remember the good times, but they can sit for a minute and just appreciate all of the seen and the unseen efforts that George Balhan put into the sport and into the fan base, because I 100% wholeheartedly agree, dude. This sport is the way it is because of a lot of people that had their hands into it. But I believe that there are fingerprints on this sport that you left.
Well, I appreciate that. And more than you know, I think like how Tom got to do a farewell tour, and I don't know if Gary technically did a farewell tour, but I think he might have known that it was going to be his last year, but maybe he didn't. But even if guys like Gary or myself, if we could have, and I don't think I could have at the time, but if they could have came to me and been like, hey, dude, you're done. Like, we're going to give you one last show. It's going to be the Minneapolis December show. That can be your chance to say goodbye to the fans. I think if I could have gotten that kind of closure or something, the first few years wouldn't have been as rough as they were for me. But they might have. And again, I might have said at that point, like, no, if that's the case, I'm done now. I don't know. There's like you said, there's so many great people that have had their fingers and everything. But my regret is, again, making that comment. I can't apologize enough for that. But
I shouldn't have brought it up. If I would have known it would have affected you this way, I wouldn't have even brought it up.
No,
I care too much, man. I love you, dude. Don't forget I said anything.
That's why we stopped each other having other conversations, because we wanted this to be organic. But 17 years is a long time to be involved with something, and somebody doesn't stay. I mean, I guess there are people that sit in jobs that don't love it, but I feel like to be involved in something like a Monster Jam for 17 years, you've got to love what you do, and you've got to believe in your product. And again, any job you work for, you're going to have bosses above you that don't treat you right or don't do right things. But yeah, man, I till this day I'll tell everyone, like, it's the greatest show out there. Like, it's great. You get diversity, you get excitement, you get the feeling of the trucks, you get to smell the trucks. Like, it's every sense known to man. You get to enjoy in one thing. Like, you go to a movie, you get to hear it, you get to watch it, but like, you feel monster trucks. You feel when they land. You wouldn't think sitting up in the stands you'd feel them hit the ground, but like everything. And I know that's one of the reasons why we have a good following and a good fan base with like kids with autism. They like the vibrations. They like the same thing with the deaf children, and as much as you like to say, like, in the end, it's about the kids, right? Like, the kids are there to have fun, but the parents come out sometimes more jazzed than the kids do. So I know I'm jumping around, but to go back to the whole sponsorship thing, like, they're always going after these spin masters and all these things, but I feel like there's markets for Callaway golf clubs. Like, us dads, we do stuff on the weekends, right? Like, we don't always necessarily spend 24/7 with the kids. So, well, they're there. Like, let's sell some golf clubs. I promise you, if Callaway had a sticker on the side of a truck, I'd like to pride myself on buying products that are involved in motorsports. And I know I can't be the only guy out there that does that, right? So let's get Maybelline on the side of, Cynthia's truck or something. Like,
yeah, brand names that people know.
Again,
like,
I will run a company that told the people, yeah, but I feel like the truck Cynthia's in isn't the best fit for Cynthia.
Yeah, I agree.
That, there's little girls, there's teenage girls that look up to her. And I don't know what teenage girls are into, but I know like what my daughter's into. She's into Hello Kitty and she's into unicorns. Absolutely love that unicorn truck.
Yeah.
So why, like, there's got to be some type of sponsorship along that line. I just feel like, then again, maybe it's because I was involved in it for so long. I just feel like there's so much more out there and so much more room for the sport to grow.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it's coming from. If it's not coming from, maybe Feld is reaching out to those companies and they're just going no way. And how do you get those people to the events? I don't know, but
yeah. And it's the new products. I think the thing that Feld is doing so well right now they're having to get creative with new products to push. Like, I mean, they're obviously doing more live streams for events. They're doing more on YouTube. They're doing more series, right? They're doing more, that thing on Mav TV just came out with Tristan England, highlighting him kind of like a documentary style show. Like, they're doing so much, they're pushing so much. And I think that the opportunities are going to continue to grow. Not being on national TV beyond Mav TV is hurting us. I think that set us back a couple years. I think that's why they're sensitive right now about fans coming and recording the whole event, because it's like, look, we're trying to create new products as a business so that we can continue to attract. And then you got too many corporations that they care more about the national TV coverage than they should. Who cares about TV? I don't care if something's on NBC anymore, because I watch Peacock, right? I've got the Peacock app, but I don't have TV. I have not had cable since I got married. Since Mackenzie and I got married almost 14 years ago. We've never had cable. So I think that stuff makes a big difference. But I think one of the things I wanted to ask you, though, was because we started talking about identity. One of the things that I have always asked drivers that no longer drive, I had a great conversation with Lee O'Donnell about this. I've talked to Cam McQueen about this a lot. I've talked to Becky McDonough about this. When you're a Monster Jam driver and you are Mohawk Warrior, and then you wake up and you're no longer Mohawk Warrior, but you are, right? Like, you'll always be Mohawk Warrior, but you're not. That's not what you do anymore. And I was always very sensitive about that for years. The past several years, I'm like, okay, this won't last forever. It's part of my identity now, but when it's over, it's going to be hard. And I think I was more prepared for that whenever I got the news that Great Clips wasn't coming back, and then the company decided to park the truck. But I still had to grieve it.
Yeah.
Like, I grieved it like a death.
Absolutely.
Now, the only reason I did was because I had conversations with drivers that they did go a couple years with, like, just, I mean, all of a sudden you don't feel like you've got your purpose anymore. And it's because that identity is no longer part of your fabric on who you are. At least it's not what you get to do anymore. And you still feel like you're Mohawk Warrior, but you don't get to do that.
Yeah.
If you could go back and do it all over with that moment, like what you know now, go back to when you're no longer driving that truck. And the reason I'm going to ask this to prepare everybody listen, as you kind of you probably already have your answer, but there's so many people listening to this that have been through a job change. Maybe they've been through a divorce. Maybe they've been through trauma. Like, maybe they've lost a child. Like, maybe they've just, who they were is no longer the life that they live anymore. And like, they've fallen into depression. They've fallen into just feeling like there's absolutely no purpose to life. And like, they've lost the motivation to even wake up, because I believe that they're holding on to an identity that is no longer meant for them to have. And they almost have got to still put that to death in a way, put that old identity and able to make room for this new part of life. And I love helping people and encouraging people to do that, saying like, hey, process through that. You said you went to a therapist. Like a lot of times that's what it takes. It takes talking this stuff out and going, do I matter anymore? Because I'm no longer Gravedigger. Do I matter anymore that I'm no longer, a vice president of sales at this pharmaceutical company? Do I matter because the impact doesn't seem to be the same? My kids don't call me anymore, whatever it might be. If you could go back and do it all over again, how would you shorten that time gap of post Mohawk Warrior and being able to kind of move on to that next chapter in such a better, healthy place that you're in now mentally?
I think you nailed it with you kind of mourn it like a death. Like, I definitely 100% should have gone to therapy right away and talked to somebody, right? You can talk to your friends all you want, but they're your friends. And it does help getting it out there, but they're gonna be more, I guess, kind of yes men to you, like, oh yeah, for sure, for sure. To whereas you talk to somebody that's impartial and they'll tell you, yeah, you're okay for feeling that way, but this is why this happened and this is what's going to happen next for you. And, like you just kind of need to put that chapter to rest, I guess. Um, and it's okay to be scared. It's okay to not know exactly what direction you're going to go in right away, because you're going to find your path. Like, um, I've always been a fighter, and I don't know why I chose. So I was given advice a long time ago from somebody, and I use this on my kids when something bad happens. I use it on my wife. And it's truth. Like, when something bad happens to you, you have a choice. You can choose to be a victim or a survivor. Um, and that's kind of, I would heed that own advice to myself, because I was choosing to be a victim forever. I wasn't told straight up that this is what was happening. They kept it from me. I can't believe this. I can't believe that. I was choosing to be a victim instead of choosing to go, I had a great run. I had 17 years of not knowing what I was going to initially do with my life. I traveled the world like for 17 years. I felt like, when I was driving, like, I'd like to say it was the heyday, but it necessarily wasn't. But like, we were exploring new things. We had never done Europe, so we started doing Europe. I was on TV commercials. I was on TV, like,
The
I
Cupcake
led.
Show. You were on the Cupcake Show too.
Yeah, I did
Yeah,
Cupcake Wars.
the
Yep,
Cupcake
I did
Wars.
that. Honestly, that was kind of the start of me moving out here to California. Was that show? But I got to do things that most people could only dream of doing. Right. So instead of me at the end of that going, I'm blessed. I led a great life. I was like, who ripped this life out from underneath me? Who can I blame? Um, Instead of saying, like I said, hey, I'm blessed. Okay, what's next for me? What's my next chapter? What can I do? Um, and so I guess that'd be my advice to myself, is be thankful for what you had. Like, yeah, that opportunity could have never have arose. I could have been, I could still be in Illinois doing who knows what I would be doing. And not to minimize anybody else's job, but I wasn't stuck in a 9 to 5 my whole life. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Like, we're rock stars when we're out there. We've got, again, 65,000 people giving you a standing ovation in Anaheim, California. You can't explain that to anybody unless you've had it. Like, you can be there and everything, but when they're cheering for you, for Bryce Kenny going crazy, it's one of the best feelings in the world that 99.9% of the world will never know that what that admiration is like. And I guess and also maybe not letting that get to your head, going, you know what, I was blessed to get to do that. You're not a rock star. You're just Rexy's dad, or you're just somebody that's got a cool job, and embrace that and love it. And let's tackle what's next in life type thing,
That's very well said. And being able to give other people the megaphone. I think so many people are desperate for people to listen to them.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you would just spend your time promoting someone else's message, like, it'll give you more satisfaction than ever before. And I hope that, this would be a great last question. All right. Before I give my answer, I'm going to ask you, unless I'm going to ask it, and then you can tell me if you want me to answer it first. Okay. I started going down this. What do you hope your impression, your influence, what do you hope your influence on the sport of Monster Jam is? What does George Balhan hope that you're leaving Monster Jam with?
It's a hard one. I'd like to say, and I keep going back to it, I made a difference in kids' lives. My mom, again, we didn't grow up with a lot of money. She was a very religious person. I went to all the way up to high school, Lutheran school, and as an adult now, I'll probably get emotional talking about this, but I realized the sacrifices my parents made. Every year, my mom would adopt a family at church. They had a Christmas tree. You go up there, take a name off it, right, and help a family that was worse off than you. As an adult now, there wasn't a lot of families that were a lot worse off than ours, but there was. And she would take presents basically out from under the tree from her kids to help somebody else that needed them. So I've always been drawn to helping kids, right? Like, and then when my mom ended up getting the brain cancer, I've always had a soft for people that talk to me about brain cancer or whatever. And one of my really close friends now was somebody that started out as a fan that came through an autograph line in San Francisco. Johnny, JJ, their whole family came through the line, and the little boy had Mohawk on his head, right? I was like, oh man, I love your Mohawk. And the mom, I don't remember if it was the mom or the dad, John, that said, yeah, I had brain cancer because of radiation. It wouldn't grow back. And like instantly I pulled him aside. It was like, you guys wait here. Bumped him up into some better seats, I think is what happened. The next year I ended up taking them out to dinner, and they became like close friends of mine. You know, like we still talk. And so like they had these cool custom bunk beds made. One was Mohawk Warrior, one was Grave Digger. Knowing I got kids through some rough times, I guess, is what, if anybody says what's George known for, I'd like to, say, hey, he went that extra step for some kids. We had one that did a Make-A-Wish in Tacoma. Little boy had spinal cancer, right? And same thing, like I got up in the truck, brought him in, set him on. He wanted to hear it start. Hey, can we start the truck? Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead, start the truck. Started the truck, it's running. The kid goes, can we drive? I looked out there, and I forget who was out there, whoever was running the show, somebody with an RII. I was like, yep, probably going to get fired, but we can drive. And I turned my RII box off, and I put it in drive, and I drove the kid around the thing. And like something like that. Like, I know the boy ended up passing away shortly after. And fire me, man. Fire me. So, God, Bryce, I'm mad at you now. You got me all choked up.
Oh, man. This is the good stuff, buddy.
Yeah, dude. That I help little kids out. That's what we're there for, right? So,
well, not only did you do that, I know that you helped a lot of other people. Like you just have helped a lot of people. I think I appreciate that, like, you embodied both the Mohawk and the Warrior part of the title that you built. And I can confidently tell you that I probably didn't embody the Mohawk side. I would hope that I embodied the Warrior side, but you embodied both. And, if there's somebody out there listening, like, and George made a difference in your life, like, just DM him, like, send him a message. And I hope that you get some of these stories. I think the most powerful thing that all of us have are our stories.
Absolutely.
I also think that that's the best way through trauma is telling our stories. I think that's why therapy helps. I think that's why good family helps and being able to talk about it. But most people don't ever tell their stories because either they don't think anyone wants to hear them, or they don't want to open up. Like they don't want to peel back that wound, if you will. And then here we talk for 2 hours. We could talk for another 2 hours. We won't, because you need to go take care of Crystal. But the fact of it is,
I hear a walker behind me going back and forth.
Do you? So either she's chiming in, or either she's like, "Are you almost done?" or she's trying to get in our conversation. One of the two. I'd imagine it's the earlier one. So we're gonna let you go in a minute, but I would encourage anybody to tell your story. And if somebody's made a difference in their life, like they, if George Balhan made a difference in your life, like I said, send him a DM and tell him how. Not because that strokes George's ego. It's because, like, you need to get that off your chest and tell your story to someone else. And I would selfishly love it if, George got into his DMs here in a week and there's like 15 messages. Like, that would make me so happy. But anyway, I just
I'll send them on to you too.
Yeah, please do. I just want to tell you thank you. Like, I've never really, I know I've told you this, but not really in this way. My life and my world and the stuff that I've gotten to do, and really got to do 8 years with Mohawk Warrior. There's so many people that were involved, but none of it would have started had you not made the decision that you made. I love that chapter of my life. The Mohawk Warrior chapter for me is so special. Even if it was incredibly hard, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change, yes, I would do things differently, like, show you more honor, things like that. I would do things differently. But at the end of the day, I'm so glad everything went the way it did, because it made me a better husband. That chapter of my life made me a better father. It made me a better son, even to my parents. And it made me a better friend. And it made me realize just how much was inside of myself, and I wasn't relying on the world anymore. I wasn't relying on acceptance from fans, from companies, from colleagues, from anything. It broke me down into my very foundational beliefs. I guarantee you, had that 8 years not gone the way it did, I probably would have never written my book, Geared for Life. And some people think like it's an autobiography. It's not about my life. I use stories,
Right.
but it's the foundational beliefs that when you don't have anything else to hold on to in life, and you're like, I'm stuck and I don't know where to go, the only thing you've got are your beliefs. That's it. The things that you know are true and not true. And I think that's what causes most people's biggest struggles, is because they're at the end of the day, they just don't know that anything's true. Like, they don't think that they believe in anything. It's like, sometimes you got to get very, very basic in your belief set. But I can tell you this, I believe that the world and the monster truck industry, they're better because you were in it, George. And from everybody in the Kenny household, thank you so much for just not only doing what you did, but coming to my line in Anaheim. It healed a part of my heart that I didn't even know needed to be healed. And I'm very thankful for you, my friend.
Thank you. As I am you. Again, if it was up to me, you'd still be in that truck. That truck would still be out there running. And thank you for carrying the torch way better than I could have hoped anyone would have carried it. And with that being said, man, I have a lot of friends that are still involved at Monster Jam, but feel like they're doing you an injustice by not sticking you in something where you can be more of you and do your thing. Like, I love the Monster Mutt. It's great, but you are such a well-spoken ambassador for the sport that let's get you in something that where you can go out and do your thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Hey,
love you, Bryce.
And good things are to come. So that's
absolutely
a good thing. But I appreciate you, buddy. All right, go take care, Crystal. Hey, if you're listening to this out there and you think there needs to be a part 2 at some point, you let us know. Actually, the way that I'm going to take your vote that George and I need to do another conversation at some point is that you share this episode, right? Share it out there, push it out there. We need to let more people hear George's voice. All right. So
and let's get Adam on here again too and do it. Like,
yes.
So another funny story before we go. He told me a long time ago, like, you like, I don't know where you feel. You really need to give Bryce a chance. He's the nicest guy I know. And what made me remember this comment was, he's like, me and Ryan, we try to get that guy to curse all the time, and we can't even get him to curse. He's such a great guy. When you said that they try to get me to curse, I'm like, I know they do, because I heard it straight from the horse's mouth.
They're still trying to do that. And I'm like, guys, just leave it. And then anyway, they're always trying to either embarrass me or get me to just say something outrageous. And I'm like, why do I got to say anything outrageous? You guys are saying it all the time, and I just get to laugh at you. So there you go.
Just be you, dude.
Appreciate you, man. Hey, I love you, buddy. I appreciate you. Thanks for your friendship, and tell Crystal thank you as well. So shout out to her. Hope she feels better. All right, guys. If you enjoyed it,
a little bit.
Yeah, if you guys enjoyed it, share the episode. Appreciate y'all listening, and we'll do it again. See ya. All right, please.